Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin. Thank you very much for joining us. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Thank you to the thousands upon thousands of you doing that. And of course, the figures right across all our programmes and social media has been absolutely magnificent. We're really indebted to you for showing your support. I'm delighted to say Ryan McCowan is back with us. We thought we'd lost him, Alison, but he's come back. Couple of typical Aussie, though, contractual problems, throw the dummy out the pram and then eventually comes back to us.
I'm delighted to have you back, Ryan.
Yeah. Said with the sincerity that Alison displayed there. Absolutely magnificent. Just that little edge of sarcasm. Really sad news for us on the Wednesday. Just an innocent night out at the tunnel, and then he fell while dancing to a couple of rave tunes, and it just hasn't worked out for you. Look at the Nicky.
I know.
What happened to
We're
you?
still here though, that's dedication.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I waited Dumbarton on Saturday, 70 minutes, on the end of, not a bad tackle, but last man type of tackle in the middle of the park, and I've landed on my wrist, and I've now broken wrist.
4 weeks out?
46 I would say, but hopefully looking at the 4 and then try and get back running, be back for the 6 week.
Okay, still got one left hand left.
Yeah.
Great news for obviously our tactics board, where you can bore the back end off all of us talking about a high
You're
press.
going somewhere else.
I know. Calm your jets. Well done, Ryan. We're not on Aussie radio now, son. Brilliant. Anyway, lots of football to talk about. If you want to contribute, you can in our comment section below. Scotland. Double header coming up, Poland and Portugal, and out at Hampden today for us, Patrick Mullen.
Steve Clarke has been speaking here at the National Stadium ahead of Scotland's opening Nations League fixture against Poland. Throughout the week, a number of young additions have joined up with the squad due to injury, and while it has hampered Steve Clarke's preparations, he's excited for the evolution to come.
Evolution, not revolution. Obviously this time we have a significant number of injuries that has probably impacted my squad selection a little bit, which means that I've had to dip down into Scots under-21 squad probably too many times, if we're being honest, because the under-21s also have a couple of very important fixtures coming up. But that brings its own freshness. It's important, and I've mentioned it before, is that we respect the core group that have managed to qualify for back-to-back European tournaments. But then within that core group, you have to try and add a little bit more, and hopefully we can add something that makes us better.
We also spoke to Andy Robertson, the Scotland captain, who revealed positive talks with his manager post-Euro 2024 and put to bed any sort of rumours doubting their commitment to the national team.
If we both weren't committed, we wouldn't be here. So for me, I think that tells you everything that you need to know in terms of that. We're here, we want to be successful again with Scotland, and we know that the manager and the captain can help that in a big way, and that's why we're both here again. You know, the manager wants to get to World Cup. He's made that clear. So do I. I want to play for Scotland as long as I can.
It's Scotland versus Poland here at the National Stadium on Thursday night. Kick-off is at 7:45.
Yeah, that's the first of the double header away to Portugal on the Sunday. Of course, I don't think too many sensible people will be questioning their commitment. If anything, the one thing that's been the fallout from the European Championships is the obvious criticism that comes, Scott, with not performing well.
Yeah, I think obviously we were all kind of disappointed in how the Euros went. There was games where we felt we could maybe been a lot more on the front foot and took the game to the opposition, but we didn't. We were a lot more reserved, and ultimately it's seen us out. So I know in the interview there he's not talking about a revolution, but I think we would like to see a bit more on the front foot and a bit more excitement from the team, because we know that we do have the players, we see them at club level. So I think fans would be looking for a slight change in the performance at least. Yeah,
here's the ins and outs. As ever, Ryan, you always get these with players that suddenly have to call off for one reason or another. Shea Adams, good start for Rome. I think it's 1 goal in 4 games. And of course, you look and you say to yourself, Connor Barron, what a transformation for that boy.
It's been great. Obviously, he's gone into Rangers, and although they've not got off to the start that they want, I think he's been the sort of shining light for them this season. And as much as the recruitment of Rangers has been heavily scrutinised over the last couple of months, I think they've got that one right in terms of, identifying a player from Aberdeen that they think can fit into their squad and brought him in, and he's got those rewards with getting the call-ups. That would be great for him and his confidence going forward.
Yeah, the small problem that we had at the Euros hasn't changed, Ali. We can't defend, can't score goals.
Minor details.
Just minor technicalities, which we'll get to you in just a second on. But but on those minor technicalities, if we were listening to, the reason why I'm saying that is Scott's doing his coaching badges. So when you do your coaching badges, you do get kind of you get sucked up into it. And you want to try and, I mean, if honestly, I'm not kidding you on, and Ryan would know this. If we were out on a night out with you and you started to talk about 4-3-3, we'd leave you.
No, that's not me on the night out anyway. So football will be right at the back of my mind anyway.
Right, okay. Lewandowski, you would highlight him, even though, what age is he? What do you think the age he is, Lewandowski now?
36.
Yeah.
Definitely wrote the notes to that.
I did not. I can't see without my specs.
All right, okay.
I would have said 37ish, yeah.
Yeah, 36 years of age, 83 goals and 152 caps, Ali. And we have to worry about him. Although, Poland didn't have a good European Championships either.
No, they were fairly disappointing too, but I think Scotland badly need some kind of performance tomorrow night. I just think the insipid nature of the European Championships campaign it created a downer really around the national team. I think the only positive that people took from Germany was the performance of the Tartan Army, the way the supporters went and embraced it and enjoyed it, but there was so little on the pitch to get excited about, so little to see, no real spark about the team, about performances. I think this Nations League campaign and then of course a World Cup campaign that's to come, I think you really want to see a wee bit more from Scotland now and maybe reminiscent of how they qualified for the Euros. You want to see a bit more energy about performances.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the other big question is the real barometer of how people are feeling about it is how big the crowd will be.
Have we got a number on how many fans will be in there tomorrow?
Well, I don't know. You're definitely not going to get 52,000.
I'd be surprised.
No, listen, obviously if you get your regular Tartan Army who will go everywhere, I think first and foremost performance is what gets fans to any football, so that's, I know Steve Clarke touched on obviously new players coming in, but the performance has to be better. That I think what Alison said about how we qualified, I think that's why we were really looking forward to Euros, because we'd seen us play and be brave on the ball against teams like Spain, even the Holland game up until 70 minutes. We controlled that game, so there was a bit of faith in the team getting into the tournament, and then it came and we kind of slipped back to the men behind the ball and looking to counter-attack. And I know we had players missing, but I think we got to be better than that.
Well, I know you and I were joking there about tactics, but quite simply, you play your team according to what you have available. That's your style, depending on the players you have available. Of the squad that he had available, we wanted them to be a bit more adventurous in those 3 games. Germany was a huge disappointment. You then had Switzerland there for the taking, and then Hungary again. I just, 55 passes and you're still in the middle of the park with 11 of them behind the ball. It just didn't work. Yeah,
well if you look at James Forrest, he was, between him and Callum McGregor, the experience they two players have at high-end European football with the Champions League appearances and Europa League. James Forrest should have featured at some point for it. It's incredible that he didn't have a minute. I know he's obviously missing for the next 2 games, but I think that kind of summed up where we were at. We were more worried about what we can't do than what we had actually on the bench who could impact the game, and James Forrest would be one of the players who you trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got Poland and we've got Portugal. The one way you can wipe away any disappointment is suddenly you hit the ground running again with 2 good performances.
Yeah, us football pundits and fans are very fickle. If they go out and beat Poland with a good performance, 2-3-0 win, then all of a sudden everyone's back on the bandwagon and looking forward to Portugal. So, Scotland boys will know that, Steve Clarke will know that, but I think like what we've touched on, there has to be a big improvement and a real onus on Scotland taking the game to Poland, especially being at home, whereas we didn't see that in Germany. And as much as the games were disappointing, it was probably just the nights out that everyone enjoyed more than anything, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, speak for
yourself. Nothing wrong with that.
It was all right. It was a good couple of nights at the end. Well, I've got to ask you this then. How do you deal with this? Is a good thing about, from our point of view, we are in the industry, from writing or broadcasting. And, you know, we have to offer opinion. Sometimes people don't like the opinion. If you're worth your salt in our industry, you give an opinion. Certainly there are a few who've decided to go down the road of flag wavers, but you can quickly find them out. As a footballer, how do you view, you two guys are very much in that transitional period. How did you view, as a younger player, especially at Hearts, where people are passing comment on you, you're picking up the evening news, they're giving you know, a rating out of 10, they're offering your performance in that specific game. How did you view it then, and how do you view suddenly that you're in that transition where you're going to have to offer opinion?
Depended what score they gave me, I think. If they gave me a good score, I used to...
I think they knew their stuff.
The newspaper thing was actually a thing. If you played well, you were up the next day going round to see what you got, and then depending what journalist was at the game, if you watched the game properly, then you would then see if the score was right.
Can I just give you a little insight into that, right?
Right, go on, because we all think that guy's watched me.
No,
player can't be.
I'm going to give you an insight into it on the basis of the written press. Would sit there and they go, "Do you want to do the ratings?" Ah, for God's sake! And then no credence or credibility would be absolutely added to anybody doing the ratings.
That's very harsh.
Yeah, but true. Just a complete nonsense, you know. But you're right. Every player reacted to it.
Did.
You know?
I bet people had a few messages from players over the years about that rating.
Stonewall certainty.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So.
How did you handle the criticism?
It would depend, because most of the time, you know, especially as a defender, you know if you're at fault for a goal, or if you know that you didn't have a particularly good game. So you could understand it, but I was try to stay level-headed. I didn't get too, you know, excited when I got a high rating, and didn't get too low when I had a bad one. It was more just hoping to play next week and making sure that the manager wasn't picking up the evening news to see if I got a 2 or a 3.
Did you ever feel the need to pull a journalist up on anything? No? Not because you're not that type of person?
Yeah, they have to do a job as well. I think if you think they're off the mark, then you're allowed to ask a question. You're allowed to ask questions,
absolutely.
the same as they're allowed to ask you questions when you're doing your interview. I think fair's fair.
Have you been like that? Have you said that to someone?
No, I think the things I've been obviously slaughtered about in the past, that I've probably had a bad game. I think Ryan's spot on. You know as a player, as soon as you've leaving that, you know during the game if you're having a bad game.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a case of, right, let's get through the next couple of days back on the training park and hoping you get picked for the following week to go and put it right. Because there is games, Ryan, I'll tell you, one week everything's going for you. You can tell your first touch, I'm having a good game today. You turn up the following week, it's bouncing off you, and it just doesn't work for you. It can be so frustrating at times, football, in terms of things like that. So, and I think in Scotland, no game's ever the same week by week.
Yeah, I mean, from your point of view, Ali, I lived by a code of, if you are going to offer opinions, make sure that you could stand by them and meet the person the next day. And I've had a right few ding-dongs with people down through the years.
Yes, I would agree.
Yes, absolutely. If you're worth your salt.
I think it's inevitable. I don't think you would. I've never criticised someone gratuitously. I would never try and make it personal. But I think if you're offering an analysis of a game, sometimes you have to. It's just as long as it's within a context and it's fairly fair. I think most people accept it and understand it. I think the most feedback and the most I would have would be from managers rather than from players.
Yeah.
Really? Give us an example.
No. Yeah. No, I've had that as well. I think I had Boydie fall out with me for about 2 or 3 years as well.
Did you?
Yeah. Just basically because you have to offer an opinion on his performance as a Premier League striker. He was absolutely fantastic, but Walter never picked him for the Champions League. And, you know, I think when you have to write that and point out that he didn't see him as being good enough at that level for it, then players get a little bit tetchy. We sorted it out, man to man. But you have to offer that opinion in every game and everybody that you see. Some don't like it, some do. And of course, we try and read out as many of the opinions as possible. Stephen Glancy, I'll read this one out. There you are. It's just to show you that I don't really and try and go through them all. Peter slagged me for saying that Rangers were guilty for the fan ban. He let Tam McManus say exactly the same thing. I'm not interested now. Couldn't lace the boots of open goal. There's Stephen, which is fantastic. Stephen, listen, everybody is entitled to their opinion. We love reading out good and bad, and everybody's got their own level of programme that they watch and listen to as well. So good luck with that, Stephen, and good luck with the P1 exam. Now, let's crack on because there's lots to talk about. What about the results over the weekend? It's still Wednesday, can you believe it? Still the fallout from it. You guys watched all the games. Here's the results that kicked in. Aberdeen, going great guns, could win the European Cup Winners' Cup if their fans are anything to go by after jumping on the pitch. And it was honours even between Dundee, St Mirren and Motherwell, surprising everybody with a good start to the season. Dundee United heaping the pressure on Ryan's old club. Hibs drawing against Kilmarnock, and Celtic, well, just coming out on top again against Rangers at home at Celtic Park. Did it surprise you, Ryan McGowan?
But Hearts got beat.
That Celtic won so comfortably.
Yes and no. I think going into the game, everyone would have expected Celtic to win. I think it was probably the manner in which it was won. I don't think Rangers particularly laid a glove on Celtic, which probably annoys Rangers fans more than anything. I think that if they were true to themselves, they would have felt that they were sort of behind the eight ball going into the game. But I think there's always a manner of a way to lose the game as such, and I think that the way that they performed, their body language, it kind of summed up with the Kyogo instance. We chased back 60, 70 yards to put a tackle in. I think you could just sense that Celtic wanted that more, in terms of the 3 points, and knew what kind of statement it would make for the rest of the season. And I think that's probably what most of the Rangers fans are more annoyed at, other than the result.
I've said time and again that Brendan Rodgers, regardless of his circumstances of coming back in, when he returned to Scottish football, for me, he's the best coach in the country. So he's up against, now Philippe Clement has to try and wrestle the title from them. What did Rangers not do in that game that they should have been able to do, or should have done in a tactic to try and stop that result unfolding?
Well, a lot of people said that they're positive, obviously the high press that Rangers started the game with, but once Celtic broke it, the game just completely flipped on its head. For me, I would have done what Clement done in the Scottish Cup final, and I'd have filled day spaces where Celtic, we've seen how many early goals they've had since the season began. They've started games like a house on fire, especially the first half. So
do you think Clement should have stuck, for example, Dejan Sterling on McGregor?
I would have. It's easy saying that, because then when you drop off, Cal McGregor can then drop off, but the passes that are hurting you might not be there because you filled the spaces. I would have done what they done in the League Cup final, but the full-backs didn't go too high, and they made it stuffy. They frustrated Celtic, and they looked like they might nick a goal for a set piece. Yes, they went out. I think when I heard Clement say last week they were going to go and get after Celtic, I think you knew it was going to happen, because that Celtic team can play through you. They figured out after 10 minutes, and after that it was cigars out. So yes, you want to. The flip side of that, as soon as Clement goes out and plays that, you're basically telling everybody, you're playing against a superior team. But in a results business, there's now 5 points in it. I would have tried to stay in the game as long as possible and look to kind of hit them on set pieces, because Celtic, man for man, have better players than Rangers.
The biggest problem, though, and I'm going to bring Ali in shortly on this, but from a player's perspective, it's great to get an insight from you guys. I just don't understand the situation where the manager doesn't have a great record now against Celtic. Yep. Brendan's 1 loss in 19. Okay. His record is incredible. But when you see the manner of the goals that Rangers are losing, they're losing goals in these games that are so similar it defies belief. Pass, down, byline, cuts back, racing in Japanese player, in behind Tavernier, goal. Or somebody's crossed the ball into the box, they're sleeping Barisic, in comes Abada, goal. It's a similar situation regularly. The first two, the one that was offside, yep, and the one that eventually hit the net, and Maeda, again, could have scored one, yep, but it was blocked. That is such a similar pattern. Surely you must see that and think, change it.
I think if you ask Ryan, he'll tell you the basics of defending are follow your runners, and when the ball's coming in for the opposite side, you've got to open your shoulders up, see where Maeda is, especially Tavernier's had hell with him over the last few years, so it's like you said, it's similar. So they're obviously not learning from the mistakes in the previous games. On the flip side of that, when you're not controlling the ball, when you're playing against a team with that quality and that pace, it isn't easy to play against them as well. That's the one thing I will say. Maeda, Kyogo, even Kuhn, the way the midfield play, the counter press edge of the box, the amount of times they rob the ball back off a Rangers player, it isn't easy to play against that. There's no question about that, but that's something that Brendan Rodgers has implemented in his team, whereas Clement, there's no structure, there's no... I just still can't see how they're trying to play.
Even this early in the season? Even
this early in the season, they don't look like a team. The goals, the kind of hands go up after it, looking for an excuse or to blame someone, but it's the same goals we see and the same chances they've been giving away against these Celtic players for years now, and they haven't learned their lessons.
Are you thinking at this point, as they go on the international break, coming back against Dundee United and then a run of games which includes the Europa League, are you at this point thinking, look, he's got to somehow get the new signings, the players that are back from injury, into a structure that Rangers fans will cut him some slack?
Well, he's got to do that to get results for the team. He doesn't know. First of all, he doesn't know what his best team is as yet. We're now in September, 5 points behind Celtic. The Europa League games, tough games in there, tough away games. It could get really bad before it gets any better, I think, for Rangers.
Yeah, Ryan, just picking up on what Scott was saying there, if you are in a situation as a defender and you know you're coming up against somebody who is making your life regularly in these big games a living hell, even at Ibrox when Tavernier goes to clear the ball, bang, yep. Maeda's there, the ball's in the back of the net, rather fortuitously, but it's there and he has to be there to make it happen. What do you do? Is there a situation where you as a right back or a full back would say to the manager, listen, I'm getting absolutely roasted here for my qualities against this guy. Does there need to be a question where you say, can I get cover? Is there someone else who's going to drop in? Should the manager see that? If it's a recurring problem.
Yeah, I think that's down to the team. As much as Tavernier should do better, like we've said, there's been continuous goals that are very, very similar, and that kind of shows you from afar that they're not working on how to defend that properly. The thing with the cutback as a defender is you don't want that one that comes straight across the 6-yard box for a tap-in. You would rather the cutback. But if you are going to have your cutback, you need your sort of midfielders or your number 6 to be covering that area. And Rangers don't do that. They don't have the midfielders that are capable of getting back and putting out the fires as such in the 18-yard box. And it does make Tavernier's life difficult because he's trying to watch the ball, he's trying to stay in line with the defence. When the ball does get cut back, or does go down the line, he's worried about that one that goes straight across and Maeda gets the tap in. So he's, in the ideal world, he wants Maeda on the right-hand side, but the attacking players, if it's a perfect ball and a good run, he's always going to be reacting, and he actually does quite well in the one that he does get a block in.
Yeah, that was just 5 minutes after.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you there, Ryan, like, in that situation, and because of the amount of times somebody has gotten behind Tavernier and scored or maybe had a chance, I think maybe after the third or fourth time it happens, your job's right. I'm checking him, let them deal with what's in front of me, and I'm just going to go man for man and make sure my direct opponent isn't going to get an opportunity.
I think defenders Tavernier's getting the blame for that goal, but no one's speaking about the boy that lets Johnson run clean off him to get the cross in.
Yeah, but that's eventually Connor Barron.
Yeah, but in terms of the game, Connor Barron didn't actually sit in there in a defensive...
No, but when that triangle is played, he's the man chasing Johnson down to the byline.
So I feel if I was Tavernier, I'd be more annoyed at that, because if he tracks his runner, the ball goes out, that situation doesn't arrive. So, as a defender, I always say there's probably 4 or 5 people at fault for any goal that's conceded, and it's normally the last one that gets the blame. But if you actually video it back, there'll be somebody that gave the ball away, there'll be someone that wasn't tight enough when it was a 3v3 outside, then there's a boy that's let his runner go, then it's Tavernier who's not picking up at the back post.
Can I offer just one thing on this, which is quite simply, again, taking up what Scott offered there, which is quite simply, it's not as if it's a unique goal. I absolutely get you. Everything is a team game where whenever something's built up, each person has a role, and if you're able to exploit it, fine. It's a team game. You didn't track your runner. You're in the middle. You allowed the ball to cross right over the 6-yard area. But when you look at the goals in the last 4 or 5 games that have been scored, you know, any one of the goals you could see, Tavernier just needs to look round. He knows he's there. He has been there every time. So it's not as if it's an unusual situation to deal with. He knows he's there.
I just think he's not used to it. I think this is
not used to what, him ghosting in behind him.
I think Celtic and Rangers players never played for Scotland players go from playing against players like myself, average Scottish Premier League players, week in, week out. Then they go play in these big, massive games against Celtic in Europe. And I just feel like they're not at that level. And it's such a different level. It's such a higher speed. They do things much quicker. And week in, week out, he doesn't get tested. Very rarely does anyone do that to Rangers other than Celtic. So I think as much as they maybe work on it, they don't actually get to do it in a game because no one else can really lay a glove on them for a number of years. So I think that's the issue that they sometimes struggle with, is that they get put into these big games. They know what's going to happen, but they just seem to struggle in handling that week in, week out.
Yeah, I understand what Ryan's saying. I just think for me, if I'm captain of Rangers and you'll watch the games back and you think, I could have done better there in these similar situations, I think the next time I'm playing, I'm fully concentrating on I ain't losing a goal at my back post. So whether that game's 2 months away or 2 weeks away, that would, I feel as a player when you make a mistake and that, even playing further forward like me, you try everything for that not to happen again, and it's in the back of your head. Whereas what Ryan says in terms of Rangers usually control the ball, they don't do that against Celtic, and Celtic constantly ask you questions, especially as your back four. Rangers don't get asked that many questions with the pace and the intricate passing that Celtic have. Kyogo, 1 minute he's behind you, he's in, dropping in, then he's spinning in behind. There was a couple of times Kyogo could have just ran through, and if Carter Vickers plays the ball, he's in with just a wee angled pass, and that's because of how good Celtic are on the attack. They constantly ask you questions, so it is difficult. But from a personal, from his personal battles that you're always talking football, don't let your guy get the better of you. It's the individual battles.
Yeah, the biggest problem now is Alison is, we've talked about it. The manager has to sort it out. The manager has to, as I've said many times, if there's a new ethos at Rangers. Time, no short-termism, give it a long-term view, then the manager has to be given time. The hysteria that's followed this game is incredible. But I think now, from Dundee United away, when they come back, he's got to try and get that stability, got to try and pick a team that everybody knows is going to be that near enough 9 out of the 11 are regularly going to be the team. The other big problem that I think he's thrown the gauntlet down, which I think he's left himself absolutely wide open on, is when he was asked, is the gap huge? And Clement said after it, no, we will see in January. Now, it's Ibrox, it's 50,000. You know, at that point, you're thinking, are they in touching distance? Are they good enough? Has he got a settled 11? Can he take Celtic in Ibrox in their own backyard?
Yeah, I think that line jumped out at you when he said it. I think there's 2 aspects to it. One is the fact that they could beat Celtic at Ibrox and it could still be an irrelevance, because by that point Celtic could be so far in front. I think 4 games in and Celtic have got a 5-point cushion. This isn't a team that you would expect to ship a lot of points between now and then. I'm not saying that they'll go unbeaten, but you wouldn't anticipate that there's going to be too many stumbles, just given the manner and the evidence that's been presented to you in the opening month of the campaign. Can you say the same about a Rangers team who have already dropped points to Hearts on the opening day, have lost to Celtic? I think key among it has to be stability, but stability only comes from winning games. It only comes from performances and from results. And if you don't have that on a consistent basis, what the hysteria that you've seen in the aftermath of Sunday's game continues to build. That noise just continues to echo around the team, around the stadium. You start to sense a disjointed nature to performances. You feel it fragmenting all throughout the club. You feel the supporters getting frustrated, players getting frustrated. the only way to dissipate that is to win games.
Yeah, we're about to find out. Thank you to so many of you for your comments on that game. So many people want to talk about it, some rational in their thought process, and some who obviously join chat rooms just to absolutely annihilate everybody and annoy the life out of them, which is difficult for me presenting a show and then sifting through the sensible comments and then the not so sensible.
I can only imagine.
You know, so from that point of view, listen, we try and read out some of your messages on the live feed, of course, if they are sensible. But we do value your support because it does indeed bring some erratic behaviour. Some people can look at it logically, whether Rangers can suddenly get back on track against Dundee United. And then, of course, let's not forget, they've got the small matter of European football, where again, Ryan, they get tested. They will get tested against better teams again. And to be fair to Rangers, they have been flying the flag over the last, 5-6 years, you know, really well for Scotland. Not many other teams have been able to do that.
Yeah, and that's what kind of one reason why I don't feel like, especially way in Europe, they always seem to get good results. I think they're always hard to beat. They almost play a different style to what they do. Whereas at the weekend, I felt like they just went out and was like, we'll try our best against their best and we'll see who wins. And I felt like that was a silly decision. I think they should have treated it as a sort of big European away fixture and went there and tried to stay in the game for as long as possible. You know, I wasn't at the game, but I was watching it. And you could see after 10 minutes or so that the Celtic fans were a little bit, there was a few stray passes that they were getting caught in the press. Just keep yourself in the game. Just keep doing that to a certain extent and put all the pressure on Celtic. If Rangers dropped back into a 5-4-1 formation, for example, and sat there and said, go ahead, break us down, the Celtic fans would have been getting frustrated with it. But then puts the pressure on Celtic players. They might start doing things that they don't usually do. Whereas I think after 10 minutes and the Celtic players started to feel that Rangers are going to press every opportunity, they knew that they only had to break it 1 or 2 times and they'd be in. And I think that gave them a lot of confidence.
I think as soon as the goal went in, it was offside. As soon as Kyogo scored the goal, I think you could just sense a shift in the game. You could sense a shift in the tone of the game. The fragility within Rangers, they knew that Celtic could beat the high press, that they could get in behind them. And I think from there on in, it was a matter of time before that first goal came. Yeah,
the other point, with that, I don't know if you can remember, what game was it where a Rangers manager, I don't want to say Giovanni Van Bronckhorst in case I'm doing him a disservice, but there was a game where Rangers came to Parkhead in the last 2 or 3 years and decided to sit in.
Gerrard.
I think it was Gio.
I think it was Gio. And
Is that the one where Sakala scored?
Well, they sat in, but Celtic just stormed. It was like a wave after wave after wave sitting in. I mean, it's fine, as you say, if you can hold them out, frustrate them, take that 20 minutes, silence the crowd. But I think it ended up 3-0. I don't know if it was Mark Warburton or Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, but it was a sit-in job. And Celtic ended up steamrolling them again, so. But I think sometimes along the way, Frankie says he thinks it was Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. It was 3-0 at half time. It might be. I remember a game where they sat in and everybody said, "Wow, never seen a Rangers side just come and just think, well,
park the bus.
We're going to park the bus."
It's getting the right mix within that sitting in though.
Do you know what the difference is though? And I hate to be simplistic about any game because we're going to talk about obviously, teams that started the league and everybody thought, they've had a great transfer window, but it's recruitment.
Yeah.
It's players who are technically gifted and signing the right players, right mentality. I know it's a complex situation, but right mentality, technically up to it, and able to handle the occasion and able to take the game. And I don't think their recruitment is good.
At Rangers? No, apart from what Conor Barron was saying, but I didn't think he was great in the game. I know he worked hard and he tried to go on the ball. I felt when he did receive the ball, you could tell from the body language of some of his wide players that they didn't really want it. See, when you are in midfield and you can tell that by just looking at the guy's shape, if he really wants it, puts you under a lot of pressure. You need the guys, your wide players, to kind of take the sting off you, get you up the pitch, win your free kicks, set pieces and maybe get a goal for there, but they didn't. And then you flip that, talk about recruitment, Celtic didn't miss Matt really on Sunday. Bernardo comes in, thought he was outstanding in the game. And then £11 million signing comes on after that. Luke McCowan comes on, so in terms of the structures of both clubs' transfer policies, it's night and day.
Yeah, okay, we're going to talk Hearts after the headlines.
Hi there, I'm Kerry and here is your Daily News update on Wednesday the 4th of September, brought to you by Arnold Clark. On the Journal show this week, Gordon Parks believes that Rangers manager Philippe Clement needs to make it happen on the pitch after the fallout of the first Old Firm defeat of the season.
This is a manager that has to prove himself now. He has to stop making outrageous comments and back it up with substance. He has to go and recruit players that can play and go and match up, at least make a fist of it.
Scotland assistant manager John Carver believes the national side don't need to win over any fans in their upcoming Nations League matches.
Got to be honest, I don't think so. I don't think so, because I think the proof is in the pudding. Yeah, let's not forget, you know, our recent games have been against top sides in the world, not just in Europe.
And finally, Rangers have announced their Premier Sports Cup meeting with Dundee will take place at Ibrox. However, the Copeland stand will remain closed. And Celtic women were victorious this afternoon in their first Champions League game against KUPS in a 3-1 win in extra time. For all the latest breaking headlines, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel.
Thanks to Kerry for those headlines. You might want to give us your comments on that. Don't forget, the Journal show is out tomorrow. Hugh McDonald, Gordon Parks, Alison McConnell and myself all having a ding-dong battle with each other as ever. That's what it's like. It's just 4 journalists punching each other, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm glad you mentioned that point there on Luke McCowan, because Kerry had a great one-to-one with Simon Murray, the Dundee striker, this week. Simon, of course, is now the captain at Dundee. That armband handed over by McCowan, who joined Celtic. And Simon Murray is tipping his old teammate for big things.
The man you replaced, Luke McCowan, obviously has made the move to Celtic. Just tell us, how good was he and how good do you think he could be?
Yeah, he done amazing for Dundee, you know. Obviously there's been speculation for it for maybe a few weeks, but like honestly he just done the same thing as what he always done in here. Was totally professional, you know, gave his all for the club up until the moment he left, and really that's all you could ask for, and everyone here wishes him all the best, and I think he's going to be, you know, he's going to surprise a lot of people when he goes there with what he can bring to that team, and I look forward to seeing what he could do.
It's a great interview if you want to catch up with it on our YouTube channel coming up. It'll be out tomorrow. Simon Murray talking all things Dundee, European football. I'd love to see that at Dens Park. He wants to win a trophy with the Dark Blues, and he's been talking about his own performances and what he's hoping for this season. McCowan, did it surprise you?
I think obviously I was hoping he was going to go to Hibs. I felt that Hibs needed that kind of profile of player. But
he bid $1 million.
Hibs bid $1 million. Incredible, isn't it, really? Considering he's out of contract next year as well. But listen, the boy's a Celtic fan, and when Celtic come in, it's only going to be one decision for him. But I'm really looking forward to see how he does at Celtic. I think if he can get 15 to 16 games, because it is a very hard midfield to break into. You look at, obviously, I just touched on a minute ago about Bernardo's performance and obviously the £11 million signing. So he'll know how difficult it's going to be, but when he does get the opportunity, he's going to need to grasp them.
Yeah. What advice would you give him that you didn't do?
Good question, isn't it? You've been waiting for that. You're lining up for that.
I was teeing that up for so long. I knew you were going to say
you could
it.
see it coming, couldn't you?
Well, listen, he's got a manager, Brendan Rodgers, in there. I was.
You had Brendan Rodgers?
I know, but Ronnie Dyler thought I was a left mid. Nah, listen, I just think it's a chance. He needs to believe he's good enough to get in the team, and when the opportunity comes, to give everything.
Okay. The Jambos, Ryan, what has happened at Tynecastle? Haven't got a win this season. The manager's under pressure. Is he under pressure in your book?
Yes and no. I think the performances haven't been good enough after the Rangers game. I think the recruitment's been relatively good, but I feel like injuries and not playing players where he probably believes they should be playing is causing himself a lot of problems. And you know, as much as it is a performance business, I think some of the performances this season just haven't been there. You know, you can lose your odd game. There's been plenty of times that Dundee United have beaten Hearts at Tynecastle, but I think the biggest thing for a lot of Hearts fans is the manner in which they're losing games. They're not creating a lot. they're so reliant on Shanklin, who's been obviously trying, but he's not even getting the opportunities that he had last year, and I think they're just at a real loss at the moment.
We think his head's been turned.
Yeah, I do wonder if maybe some of the transfer speculation was unsettling for him. I think it went on from January and then dragged into the summer. I think a few people might be surprised that he's still at Hearts. I think a few might have anticipated that he would have moved on, but I think now that the window's closed and you know that you're buckling down just to get on with the season, I think it's imperative that Hearts try and piece together a run of form. But you look at the fixture list and you wonder where it begins. At Celtic Park immediately after the international break. Celtic, in the kind of form that they're in at the minute, it could be a sobering afternoon for them, and then that just adds to what's already a pressurised situation.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Steven Naismith. I like him as a person as well. I want to see him do well. I think some boards have, I don't think a responsibility, I just think some boards need to show a little bit of backbone, stick by the managers. I include David Gray in this. I look at the type of pressure that some managers are under. Stuart Kettlewell couldn't buy a win at one point last season, but they stuck by him and he turned it around. With Steven Naismith, the problem I have with the whole situation is I think the Hearts fans, some of them just go over the top. They wanted Robbie Neilson out, eventually he's out.
Well, they wanted Robbie Neilson out after, I think it was 4 losses in a row. I'm sure it was. Robbie had 5 in a row. They wanted him out. I think this run is worse. And I think he's struggling to find the balance between having, because Hearts have creative players, Danda, Barry Mackay, who, when he's fit, excellent player, Spittle. They do have creative players who should be creating chances for them. When you don't have Shanklin firing, yes, it's going to be difficult, but they've got a big enough squad there to be playing a lot better, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if he was a teammate of yours. I think it might have just been before you. Ryan Stevenson's fairly two-footed, the board today in the Daily Record, just basically saying, they've made slip-ups. Could have maybe had a wee go for Nisbet. Mm-hmm. He was available, left Shanklin up there and exposed him to no support, no plan B if Shanklin's not scoring goals. It certainly is a valid point, I think, that Ryan makes on the back of the situation where the boy Vargas works hard, but he can't score goals.
Yeah, he's not going to get you 15, 20 goals like Shanklin does pretty much every season. So, yeah, they have to come up with a formula that gets Shanklin in the box. I think a lot of the time last year they got away with Shanklin dropping into that 10 role, even the season before that when they had Giannelli to sort of stretch the game, but they don't have those types of players anymore, so they have to come up with a different style. And I think the board, with the Robbie Neilson situation, they've now set almost a precedent in terms of that was 5 games, they didn't want him, he was out. And a lot of Hearts fans are now saying, well, this is the same with Naismith, why is he not out? So you can understand why they're asking those questions, but I just feel like the biggest question should be on not the style of play as such, but why are they not creating chances? What is going on at the training ground in terms of what are they doing to win games of football? But
they will have that discussion with the manager. I mean, you're looking and, we're talking about overall the bigger picture. You get a groundswell. If you're losing games, you get a groundswell of fans who start to gather pace and voice their displeasure. I think Stephen Kingsley's talking in the evening news today about, listen, if you can't handle people booing you, you shouldn't be at Hearts. Mm-hmm. I understand that him stepping up to the plate and saying that. So the booing starts. But the other thing that you take into consideration, you can talk about, a manager can talk to a board all the time about, training's really good. I mean, it's like Craig Levine at the weekend said, training's really good. I can't understand the performances.
Training isn't game day.
Exactly. So at that point, you look and you say, okay, the fans are booing. What's the team playing like? What are individuals doing? Are they gelling? Has the manager really got that backing? And then what happens is you get the cracks, as you know, Ryan. Mm-hmm. You start to get the whispers going.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest disappointment is that you don't see them. I watched the game at the weekend. I'd never felt it, even for a 10-minute spell, that Hearts were going to score or put them under serious pressure. And I think Jim Goodwin came out after the game and said, we're just going to play a low block and say to Hearts to break us down. And I felt like Hearts were spooked that that's what they'd done. But anyone that's gone to Tynecastle or playing Hearts just now, they've got the template in terms of tell us to go break them down. So I think selection-wise, Naismith's maybe been off it a little bit, probably hampered by a couple of injuries to key players in certain positions, and he's having to shuffle his pack a little bit. But everyone said that they had such a good transfer window in terms of the players they brought in. He should have enough players at his disposal to put out a team that's, one, might not be winning games, but at least be creating chances, and at least have Hearts fans coming away from it being like, on another day we would have scored a couple, and that's just the way football is.
Yeah, having been in Edinburgh and lived there for a long, long time, and understanding the mentality of Hearts and Hibs fans, and I go regularly to watch these games, you can only pass comment. Sometimes along the way, a lot of Hearts fans will say, well, you're saying stick by Steven Naismith, shut up, you're sitting in the west of Scotland, we have to pay for it, we have to watch it.
Yeah, but I think, like Brian touched on there, at the start of the season, when you're looking at the players that they had signed, your Dandas, your Spittles, the guys who were affecting games on the regular for other clubs in the same league, it just hasn't for, and obviously Barry Mackay, who was injured for a lot of last year, so you think he's coming back fit. A lot of creativity there. It's just they're now conceding goals which they shouldn't be, and when you're not doing it in both boxes, it then leads into a huge problem, and that's where he's going to need to fix it on the training ground. But pressurised situations, if you can't handle it as a player, then they're going to go under.
Do you think he should stick by him?
I would like to see him stick by him. I think I'm in the minority in terms of that with the Hearts fans I know or seen stuff on social media, but I feel like, as a Hearts manager last year, finished third quite comfortably, tailed off towards the end of the season, got to a semi-final. That's not bad going for a Hearts manager considering what's been gone on before him. We're now 4 games into the league season. Yes, they got knocked out by Falkirk in the cup, which was unacceptable, but I just feel like this could be the storm of the season. They might go on now and pick up victories, but I would like them to see them stick by, because I hate when a new manager will come in, he'll say that these aren't my players. The players then are like, this isn't the manager that I signed for, and you can almost have a Hibs situation in terms of the turnover then becomes, he's not my manager, he's not my players, I want different players, and it just becomes a whole kind of whitewash, and I think Hearts over the recent years, that stability has been one of the keys to their success. Okay, just before I get Ali's thoughts on this, then, how difficult is it for him to try and stem that groundswell of anger towards him, calling for his head, when next up is Celtic? It's not, you'd be hating the fixtures. That's why there was such a big onus on the weekend. I think all Hearts fans knew that they then had to go away to Celtic Park after the international break, and I think that's probably one of the biggest disappointments of coming out of that game, is that they felt that the players should have been almost given it absolutely everything to make sure they got a result for their manager. And as a player, I always feel that players get the easier side of the stick. It's always the manager that takes the fall. It's never the players that are putting in these performances. And I think the Hearts players probably owe Naismith a good couple of performances, and no better way than Celtic away next week or 2 weeks' time. Yeah, Alison, the biggest problem also, which has flipped this, is they find themselves at the bottom end of the table, and suddenly Aberdeen have recruited a manager and things are going really well. It's like, if you looked at the mirror image here, there's one at one opposite end, there's one who's going, you just can't be beaten at the moment. Yeah, and I think it's significant what that gap is, because these are two teams that you would traditionally expect to be going for that third spot. So I think when you look at the gap that Aberdeen have built up, it's not insubstantial. Even if you think that Aberdeen are going to go into a tougher spell of games in October, we've spoken about what comes up next. They'll have a really testing run of games. They've got credit in the bank, points on the board that you think they can maybe just inoculate themselves against anything that Hearts have got to offer. I think it becomes really hard to try and make up that distance. Yeah, I'm going to be heading up. Obviously, we've got a reporter who works up in Aberdeen, and every now and then, you've got to go up there and make sure the boy's all right. So, wages. Yes, yeah, exactly. So I'm going to head up there for Aberdeen against Motherwell. So
I mean, the whole town is they're going crazy. And Kenny, who's in Los Angeles, always watches the programme, and he said the Dons to beat Motherwell, Celtic to beat Hearts, and the Dons are 14 points ahead of them. I mean, Kenny is indicative of every Dons fan I know at the moment.
Yeah, listen, obviously a feel-good factor, especially with the manager coming in, the kind of brand of football he's wanting to give the fans. I think the most telling thing was that I didn't think they were great against Ross County, and they still managed to get it over the line. I think signs like Keskinen and Nisbet having immediate impacts when they come to the club always helps, whereas Hearts haven't had that same effect with their players, so that's why Aberdeen are in a really good place. But I think Stuart Kettlewell maybe fancies side getting up there in a rich vein of form as well, and maybe getting something.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it's just incredible. If you look at the Dons and that whole run of results, I mean, they just can't. I mean, look at that. It's just a lot win. You don't often see that.
Best habit in football. Best habit in football, yeah. And on top of that, see, when you do have new signings, that helps.
Yeah.
When you're coming into a team that's winning, that helps, and I feel like confidence. Hearts, can you get Hearts one up in that and show us that one as well?
Yeah. Don't rub it in, you guys.
Let's start that. Get him.
No, just exactly. Ryan, well done. Absolutely. Well, the funny thing is, just before we talk on one other interview we've got up, which is a great interview that Alison conducted this week. Just on that point, the funny thing is, the two of them are strangely under pressure for different reasons, but I think the noise surrounding David Gray is slightly different for Hibs.
I think Naismith's lucky that Hibs aren't flying, if I'm being honest. If Hibs were in Aberdeen's situation, I think he'd be gone, because I don't think there would be any Hearts fan that would accept Hibs being that far ahead of him so early on in the season. So I think on one side he's quite lucky, and I think again on the flip side, Hibs fans are not too. I think they're just laughing at each other after each weekend. Just be like, "You're rubbish, and so are we." But they're kind of lucky that no one's kind of running away with it. But David Gray's had a difficult situation in terms of he's come into the club as the manager. There's been well documented about players that he's wanted to bring in, and they've kind of been really slow in that process. So I think he's on a different level to Naismith in terms of the time at the club, and I think the Hibs fans will give him the opportunity. And I think Hibs fans are more disappointed that they've probably chucked away 4 points in the last 2 weeks from last minute situations. I think Hearts fans would just be delighted if they scored a goal. So there's those two different ways of a lot of Hibs fans are coming away from games seeing improvement week on week, week by week, seeing the players that they're bringing in. Of course, they'd probably want better players, but I think they can see that there's a bit of a structure starting to build. They can see performances are starting to build, and I think a lot of Hibs fans that I speak to are quietly happy with the way things are going, as much as they probably want the results to be much better. Yeah,
it's a good point he makes on the Hibs. If Hibs had started the season strong, I think.
I think that's a great point in terms of for both managers. I think Hibs did have the more difficult fixtures out the two sides from Edinburgh. Obviously, a few injuries as well. He hasn't had his strongest team, David Gray, which he's touched on. But the positives from the Hibs can spin it differently. Hibs, as you said, £1 million bid for Luke McCowan. That shows that they're ready, if they think the player's right, to spend the money and improve the club. David Gray, who we've said a million times, he's been there, he's seen. I thought Ryan made a great point in terms of Hearts not doing what's happened to Hibs over the last 3 years. David Gray's been round Hibs and seen something not work 3 years on the bounce, so he needs to be given time. He's got his own players in there, and I think he's been really unfortunate that the past 2 weeks that they haven't made them wins. But Hibs fans are quietly optimistic. I think that they will get it right in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and perhaps this show is the greatest indication of the way some managers and boardrooms should conduct themselves, because I was taking countless calls from yourself saying you were angry, saying when is McGowan going to come good? He says nothing. And I just said, look, hang in, he'll eventually deliver. And he's just come up with 2 absolute wham-bams today. He's been brilliant.
Yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic.
That pained him to say that, didn't it?
Look at his face. Yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic, hasn't he? Ali, before we go, you had a sit down with Lee Miller. And again, you know, lots of great stuff from Lee's dad of Lennon Miller. Lee was a good player in his day as well. I'm sure you guys would have played against him. Obviously, the big thing on Lennon Miller, and when he will move, he's got the right man there, his dad, to give him the perfect advice.
I've seen so many young players come up through the ranks and you think he's a real good player, and I think everything has to fall into place, everything has to line up, whether it's a development plan in terms of a club coming in and saying, listen, this is what we see for you, this is what you're good at, this is what you need to work on, we'll work on this with you. There needs to be a plan in place. It can't be like there's a big club comes in, right, you're going there. It's not like that. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place. And listen, there's luck at the end of the day as well. Has to fall into it. A lot of people that aren't in football don't understand that a massive percentage of it is luck.
Yeah, what a great insight. I mean, a really good interview that's out on our YouTube channel. It's McConnell meets Miller. Because we decided to give her a tag. She wanted, in the contract, she wanted her own title. So I couldn't think of anything better than McConnell. It is her name. I mean, what else do we can't call her? We can't call it some of the names that she gets called on social media. So we gave her top billing. What can you ask for, Scotty?
No, she got her surname in the headline. I'm just thinking about in Braveheart when they shout McCall, I'm back and shout McConnell now. Carol.
Brilliant. But listen, it's a really good interview. Alison chatting to Lee Miller. Well worth having a look on our YouTube channel. There's lots of content coming up that I know you're going to enjoy. And hopefully with a little bit of luck, there's a great little bit piece of football insight that you're going to give us in the coaching sense with one of our employees and a manager who's still actually playing as a player manager. So hopefully we'll get you out on the field once...
That's what good to go.
Obviously the cast and can we rope the Aussie in?
Getting him playing into midfield.
He is, after all, an Australian international.
Absolutely, yeah.
And a wee bit of luck
pleasure.
is what things can happen. And Lee Miller is well placed to say to his son, you know, think of all of these things in a deal. I think that's the key situation, because everybody says just move to the biggest club and the biggest money. That's not really what you want to hear.
No, it's not. And I think having someone like that is invaluable. It's an added bonus that it's his dad, but I think a lot of younger players that don't come from that footballing background, they put that onus on agents, and I think agents sometimes aren't the best in terms of they probably look at the biggest money and the biggest clubs, and I think he's really lucky to have his dad in that situation to have that. And like he said, I think there's a lot of things that go on for young players for the clubs that they move on to. You know, I have no doubts, if we're speaking about McCowan, he's a little bit older, but, you know, he would have spoke to Celtic. Celtic would have set out a sort of season plan of where they think he's going to fit in. And I think for younger players, that they need to go to a club where they're allowed to develop, they're allowed to know where they are at what stage of their development, and then go from there. So it's not just he's bid in 4 million, so I need to go there. It can be a bit more of an educated risk in terms of where they move to.
Yeah, you more than anybody will know about Lennon Miller's big decisions. You know, everybody in their granny was talking about you. They wanted to sign you, and you've had a good few moves. What was the most inspirational chat you had from a manager, just encapsulating what Ryan was talking about and listening to what Lee was saying about selling the bigger picture that bought you into it?
Well, the one that I can touch on is when I went to West Brom, and it wasn't just Roy Hodgson, it was Roy Hodgson and Dan Ashworth, and Dan Ashworth had clips of 10 games I'd played and talked about all the attributes that people in Scotland hadn't really said to me about, and we had a plan. Unfortunately, that plan fell down a well after 6 months because Roy Hodgson got the England job, and Dan Ashworth moved on. So that's where you talk about luck. If that plan might have been in place if the same guys are in place, but it's football. A manager come in, you might not be for him, and you need to move on. That's just the way football goes. Sometimes you can't predict the future, and it's very hard to make the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good insight from Lee. Well worth listening to, Ali.
Yeah, I think so. I think Ryan's right. I think having someone like that, it can be super helpful. I think just helping you navigate what can be a really tough environment where there are a lot of people who maybe present as having your best interests, who may not. I think just having someone who understands the landscape and the environment, but also knows his son. He also knows his boy and knows his capabilities, knows his ambitions and the extent of them, and knows a pathway that can help him fulfil them.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, over the course of your career, there's always ups and downs. Just when you think you're going to be able to play not only professional football, but then in your spare time go out and play pickleball, it just doesn't work out for you. You just have to sit in and not hang about with anybody. What?
I can't believe you've called it pickleball.
What is it?
So American.
It's a paddle ball.
It's just paddle in it. Have you played it yet?
I was trying to think what he's talking about.
Pickleball.
Do you want me to tell you something? Do you know why I didn't really grasp it? Because it's really for...
You're a tennis guy.
It's really for losers who can't play tennis. I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
It's not what Djokovic said on it.
Yeah.
Djokovic didn't. He was worried about tennis because of paddle.
Yeah, I know he's worried because lots of losers are playing. But if you're a top drawer woman and a top drawer man, Ali, you're playing tennis. It's as simple as that.
Pickleball for me.
Yeah, pickleball for you. Well, just yet another loser on here. Thank God Ryan's with us, for God's sake. Whatever you do, don't come in. Don't come in next week with a broken wrist, for God's sake.
I'll try not to.
Anyway, absolutely top drawer. Great to have the company of Scott, who is undoubtedly a team player. Injury still here, not calling off. McManus calls off at a whim. Scott Allen, absolutely top drawer. Next week, why don't you join us again? And you can see Scott in here with a broken leg as well. That's the type of character we've signed here. Great to have Ryan with us and Alison. Hit the subscribe button if you've got a chance. Download the app. You get all the breaking news at your fingertips. Thank you to so many of you on our feed and our comments section for supporting us. Why not join the football family and you'll get more content, including Alison's great interview with Lee Miller, and if you're a Dundee fan out there, Simon Murray's talking all things Dark Blues and offering his insight into chasing cups. Luke McCowan, to name but a few of the topics Kerry has chatted with him about. Thank you very much for listening and watching.